I just kind of wanted to make a follow-up video to part A here and just kind of give some more notes and things that might be good to go over. So, in this problem we wrote a system of equations based on the reading, and then we proceeded to solve it using the elimination method, which I call the addition method. You probably already figured this out or heard me tell you this before. The addition, I call it the addition method because we literally add the two equations together once you have either the x's are opposites or the y's are opposites. And sometimes, here's one of the things I wanted to say in this follow-up video to part A. Sometimes you already have opposites in the equations, you know. Sometimes you have a 2y and I should say you have a positive 2y in one equation and a negative 2y in the other equation. Or you have a 5x in one equation and a negative 5x in the other. So sometimes you can actually go ahead and add the equations together as they are. But again, these two equations didn't have, the x's were not opposites and the y's were not opposites, and that's what you need. You need one of them to be opposites before you go ahead and add the equations together, okay? Something else I want to point out is when you are in that situation where you have to make the x's opposites or make the y's opposites, it's not going to be random. It's probably going to be based on, is it going to be easier to make the x's opposites, easier, less work, or is it going to be easier or less work to make the y's opposites? I want to point out that it would have been just as easy, just as much work to go ahead and, instead of making the x's into opposites, making the y's opposites. Okay? So again, sometimes it's actually a different story, like, whoa, it'll be much easier to make the y's opposites, or it'll be much easier to make the x's opposites. And that's something, you know, with experience, hopefully you kind of start to implement when you use this method, okay? But I want to just really do this really quick and hit on some more points, you know, instead of making the x's opposites, I want to make the y's opposites, because that was also a very good option. So as you see, at the start we have 1y and we have 5y. The best thing to do if I wanted to make the y's opposites is I can make this 1y into a negative 5y and therefore make them into opposites. So how would I do that? I would multiply the equation by negative 5. Okay? Once again, I don't need to change the second equation. I want to leave this as 5y and I want to turn this into negative 5y. But once again, you have to multiply negative 5 by the entire equation, or to the entire equation, and that should be negative 40. Second equation is going to stay as is. And as you can see, now it's the y's that are going to add up to essentially 0, leaving me with only the x's. So I get negative 2x equals negative 4, I believe. Okay? And again, the whole idea here is to be able to solve for x now, which you can do quite easily by dividing both sides by negative 2. And that gets x by itself. And so now you know that x equals 2. All right? Now, I guess the final thing I want to emphasize in this follow-up with these follow-up notes is whenever you're solving a system, you usually have to solve for both x and y. All right? Like, knowing x and y together, that's what makes the entire solution. So knowing x and y together, that's the whole solution. And at this point, now we know that x is 2, and a lot of the time you can just kind of describe figuring out y as, again, just taking the fact that you now know that x equals 2, picking one of the equations that you originally had, And again, this is about, would I rather plug 2 in for this x and solve for y, or would I rather plug in my 2 for this x? You know, now that I know that x is actually a 2, I can plug in 2 for x. This is what you should do in general. And I'm definitely going to pick this equation. It's going I know, and I hope you do too, that it's going to be a much easier job or process of plugging in 2 for this x and solving for y to get 6. So you get the same answer. No surprise there. You should. And I guess, you know, I tell a lie. I guess there is one more thing I want to emphasize in this follow-up video, you know. This keystone question said to show or explain all your work. Now, the work I've shown, that is enough, to, you know, as far as showing all my work. But here's the thing. Here's what I'm getting at. Maybe what you should do before you move on to part B is write a little statement, kind of like, you know, my final answer is, you know, 2, 6, or what might be even better is my final answer is that there were 2 small baskets and 6 large baskets. It cannot hurt to add in like a final sentence that really you know, makes it clear what your final answer is. Okay, usually they might have like a space for you to write your final answer, but I don't think they do on this one, so it might just be a good idea to maybe like literally write down my final answer, or the final answer, or the number of baskets, small baskets that I purchased or a customer purchased was 2, and the number of large baskets purchased was 6. Okay?